are the types of questions that you can go in and that companies do, the larger pharmaceutical biotech companies do use to have an understanding of how they then incorporate those findings into their clinical studies and their outcome measures, or whether they would put that type of data generation into their market adoption strategies. And I know that can be a challenge for some of the small companies, is how do they go down and do those types of a little bit more expensive activities to have that same kind of best-in-class mentality ensure market adoption. Because it's not just getting through the FDA nowadays, it's how do you do activities that's going to ensure commercial success.
Now, I would just add to that in combination with my remark that it would be a good idea to have initiated this kind of study before you're doing pivotal clinical trials, so that you can build that information into your trial design.
Thank you. Last question on reimbursement?
My name is Ashot. Have you done any studies or thought that if you reimburse and help with the obesity issue up front as an insurance company or whatever, and then you would reduce cost of the consequences of the diseases that come out of obesity, like heart disease, cardiovascular, because at the end there's trillions of dollars worth of money that has to go to cure the consequences of obesity. So if you spend some funds up front or try to reimburse some of these techniques, which are inadequate and incomplete, I understand that, then you could basically prevent spending more money towards the end, or even the government, spending a lot of money for care.
Well, I think everybody that would be involved in this realizes that in principle there are enormous savings. And I think that's the reason why there's certainly interest in this approach, but there's also skepticism. It's in regard to what the clinician said, there's so many factors besides the procedure. There's all these behavioral factors, and they're very difficult to control in the long run. So the payers have to be shown that it really works.
Paul Steinberg from Novella Clinical. Bill, a question. You were presenting data earlier about the numbers of people who are obese. My question is kind of a little bit holistic and broad on this, but how many of those people, does any of your data show how many of those people are in a family in which more than one of the people is obese, including the children? And from a healthcare and insurance point of view, where the insurer insures a family, would there be some data to support that? I don't know how to ask this question, but that if the insurance companies did reimburse, that you would have more than one patient in a family, because you're unlikely to get one person obese in a family without children who are obese who are going to become obese adults.
You're clearly correct. There's a number of issues that are associated with obesity. Certainly the most common thing has to do with socioeconomic status, and it's actually got to do with access to affordable foods. The subsidies in the U.S. are the exact opposite of what you'd want. It's much more expensive to buy healthy foods than to buy high-fat, high-sodium, high-calorie, high-density foods. There's genetic reasons, people who have superior genes that hold on to every ounce of sugar, salt, and fat that help them to survive the famines during their prior existences, their ancestors 100 or 200 years ago, are more likely to get obese. So there's a range of both sociological, biological, and cultural activity factors that make it so that one group of individuals and another is more likely. And clearly obesity is something that tends to run in families. It actually tends to run even across friendship circles. And so any intervention that's at the individual level, when it brings in other people in their environment, is much more likely to be successful. If that's answering the question?
I'd like to make one final comment. I think, though, going back to the market dynamics, as you mentioned, Bill, is with regards to when you define reimbursement, you can go much broader with the obesity market, and it really goes beyond the traditional payer, and it's really the consumer. And they're inundated on a daily basis with alternatives to weight loss, and really an understanding with medical interventions where most likely the consumer themselves is going to be paying, or their family members is going to be paying for a medical treatment. What is going to drive them to be willing to pay out that amount of money, and understanding their psyche and understanding what is it that's going to resonate with them in terms of saying, I'm willing to go and take that step and take, even though this is less invasive, but I'm going to take a more invasive alternative to other products that are out there today and spend the money, my own money or, the money for my daughter or son or whoever, and understand what's going to drive that. Because that is really what's going to be very successful in terms of a fee-for-service model here.
And you mentioned, Bill, in your presentation that you're targeting reimbursement procedures, but you're also looking at out-of-pocket procedures.
Yeah, I think that, well, the reality in all medical devices is that it's a long road for reimbursement. The opportunity in obesity is there is a fee-for-service or a self-pay model, and for temporary devices in particular, that is an appealing option, and that's our primary focus right now. We believe there's enough of a demand and need, and there's examples. The banding procedures originally weren't reimbursed, and there was still a market that developed there. So, we're in a tough economic time right now, but there's still self-pay, fee-for-service models that are successful out there.
That raises, of course, the question of the marketability and how a small company, Reshape Medical, would develop the marketing strategy in order to target these types of patients. And comments from the panel in that area? Or strategies to overcome problems in that area? I don't know.
Yeah, I can talk about it based on experience. We have people on our team that were actually there to launch Xenical. I've worked with Botox and also have worked with addiction. So we've worked in a combination of models where it was a intervention with lifestyle modification, where there was a large component in terms of reaching out to the consumers and resonating with the consumer, but also coupling that with regards to working with the medical community because they have to go hand in hand. Then on top of that, having experience actually in working with small companies and how do you move forward with direct-to-consumer marketing, which is an extremely expensive endeavor. And I know there may be opportunities when you take that is, of course, to look at strategic partnerships in terms of the sales and marketing, in terms of having the breadth and depth, and trying to break through the noise there. But I think the first thing, as I mentioned earlier, one was, of course, is understanding the psyche of the consumer. What is it that's going to resonate with them? How do you break through the noise of what is out there? Because not only do you have medical, ethical products out there, you have a lot of over-the-counter products that make a lot of claims today and products that don't work. And having worked a little bit with the FTC products also, it's a challenge. They've been almost desensitized in terms of things that say they work and they don't. And the other, of course, is in this condition, people are looking for a quick fix. They're looking for something where they don't have to have long-term lifestyle modification, and that will not be successful. But I think, though, one of the things that you do need to take into consideration, looking at the professional side, is there are products out there, and what is it that's going to drive adoption with the physicians from an economical perspective, not only in terms of what works for the patient, but also is if I'm going to be using this procedure, what is the financial incentive for me, given that it often will be a fee-for-service? Is it going to take me a shorter amount of time? Am I going to draw more patients? Am I going to charge higher fees? What is it that's going to drive in terms of that economic driver for the physician in terms of adoption here? And then for the consumer, of course, is saying, is it something that's maybe going to be easier? Is it going to be faster? It's less invasive. I'm going to have less downtime. So it's really understanding some of those drivers of the patient ahead of launching your product. And using, I think patients really like those testimonials and can they identify it with people. And as a small startup, of course, is can you validate your model, your business model, going way far down the line, that can they be scalable? Because if you're going direct to consumer, can you develop something that is, that you can duplicate and scale that then you may either do yourself or look for a partner to move forward with? So just some thoughts.
Thank you.